Hey everybody, we got some exciting news. My book has come in the mail and I thought it'd be probably pretty cool for me to open it and let you guys see it as I open it up and maybe give you a little bit of an explanation. So this is the first time I'm seeing my book. So, trusty pocket knife. So here it is. Weird bubble wrap. My kids will probably like that. Packing sheet. And this is it. Letters to an Apprentice. So let me walk you through it. Let you guys kind of see everything that's going on here. And I can walk you through the different things. Of course, I've got the endorsements here. Paul Chitwood, president of the IMB. Daniel Sanchez, he is a professor of missions at Southwestern Seminary. Mitchell Jolly, founding pastor at Three Rivers Church in Rome, Georgia. Clayton Bullion, to be BSM director at Tarleton State University. Dr. Chuck Lawless, Dean of Doctorate Studies and VP for Spiritual Formation at Southeastern Seminary. Darren Davis, Affinity Leader for the IMB. Jonathan Williams, Senior Pastor at Willcrest Baptist Church, and Brody Holloway, Co-founder and Lead Pastor at Snowbird Wilderness Outfitters. So that's the title page there. Check that out. I'm sure you're wondering, like, what are all these? I'll get to that in a minute. Just hang tight. And I'm sorry if I'm sweating a little bit and I'm kind of a little bit dirty today. I've been working on some metal projects, and so I'm not to be 100% clean. So here we got table of contents broken up into several different things. The preface has a call to action. There's an introduction to organic mentorship. The first chapter is Word to the Wise, Draw from Many Wells. Chapter 2 is Foundations. Chapter 3 is Preparation. Chapter 4 is To the Nations. Chapter 5 is Starting Over. Chapter 6 is a really short one, but it's called The Missing Chapter, Difficult Question. Chapter 7 is Developing a Culture of Mentorship. Chapter 8 is Dear Paul, Invest in the Future. Chapter 9 is called Dear Timothy, Choose Wisely. And chapter 10 is called A Starting Point and a Path Forward. And then there's an epilogue. So, foreword was written by a friend of mine named Scott Bronner, who was the starter, the founder of Fusion. He's also the president of Concilium International. He wrote a really nice foreword. Thank you, Scott, if you're watching. And then here the preface is just kind of trying to lay everything out, both for the Pauls and the Timothys, like for the mentors and the apprentices, trying to lay things out and trying to give you a good foundation as far as like, what are we looking for here? Why did I actually write this book? You see here, I write a little bit about what I call a tale of two seeds, heirloom seeds and hybrid seeds, and how that helps us to think about the right types of mentorship rather than just the traditional thing that maybe we've always done. Like, what are some ways that we can make changes to make sure that what we do can prosper generation after generation after generation? And the things that you teach your apprentices, they will pass on to the next generation of apprentices, and so on and so forth. And then it talks about organic versus organizational growth. Let's see. Then it moves into the introduction to organic mentorship. And this is just really walking you through like what organic mentorship is. Then chapter 1 is A Word to the Wise, Draw from Many Wells. And this is where you see the first introduction to these different symbols. So the first one here is an anvil, and the next one is a hammer, the next one is a pen. Then we have like a compass, and we have binoculars. And in this chapter, we talk about 5 different kinds of mentors. And I just put a symbol there to kind of help you to wrap your head around and remember each one in its context. And then as we go in from there, we'll begin with the letters. Now, these letters are not written were not written actually by my mentors. They're letters that I wrote myself, trying to compile all of the things, or many of the things, that I learned from different mentors in my life. And so, like you'll see here, we have context, and it just kind of tells you what was going on in my life at that period in time. And then we have the body of the letter, and in that you'll find some of the wisdom that was passed on to me. You'll have some like little short tidbits of stories and things that will just kind of show you how this mentor spoke into my life during the time that we were together. After the letter, you have the outcome of this letter on my life. So basically, what I learned from that person, how I now put it into action, how I use it in my day-to-day life, how it has affected those that I mentor as well. And then I lay out here mentoring strategies that were used. So what you'll see is these are just specific strategies that these people used. And then if you follow my blog at jteleferro.com, I'm going to be doing every Monday another blog post on mentorship. And I will walk through every one of these mentorship strategies to be able to help you to kind of understand exactly what those are and how they work. Then we have here the next section, which is how we spent time together. Just kind of letting you know the practicality of like what our mentorship looked like, the nuts and bolts of it. And then the last part is how I reproduce this investment, how I have poured this into other apprentices that I mentor. So yeah, we have several. This first one is actually my mother and father. We have a guy named Jack Dale. You'll see here, he's also, you see the anvil there. I don't know if you can see it. See the anvil? It means he was a foundational mentor. And so as we go on, we do more and more. This next chapter is preparation. This is another mentor of mine. His name was Jesse Fletcher. And you see there, he has two of these. So like some mentors affect us, sometimes even in a short period of time, they can affect us from different angles. And so I'm trying to draw that out. So as you guys see these symbols, I'm hoping that you will get to the point where you kind of associate those with specific types of mentors. And so it makes it easier when you're reading the book to be able to recognize what that is. And so there's a lot of these letters, just going through these several chapters. And I think that you guys will enjoy it because it also is showing you the growth of my mentorship as I started whenever I was young. And as things have continued to grow, it will show you the ups and downs, the areas that I was able to kind of grow through because of my mentors. You can also see some of the sticking points, some of the areas where I struggled even from the beginning and I still struggle today, and how different mentors kind of helped me to kind of overcome some of those little bumps in the road. This section here, man, it was tough. I didn't know if I was going to write it or not, but it's called Starting Over, and there's a disclaimer here. It's a very personal story, and still a very painful thing that we went through in 2017. But you know, I've also made some mistakes along the road, and so this kind of works through like some of the mistakes that I made and how my mentors helped me to see them differently and how they helped me to overcome them, and how I learned also not to dodge the responsibility for the mistakes that I've made along the road. And so yeah, Starting Over I think it's the last chapter of letters. And then we go into the missing chapter, which I think a lot of you guys will really love. The missing chapter is about, well, I'll just tell you, like I had a mentor who really had an impact on my life and I loved dearly, who has since walked away from the faith and is no longer a believer. And his life is completely different now than it was then. And I don't think that he's living in like absolute sin, but he's definitely denied the things that he taught me, which is kind of difficult. I was like, how do I incorporate this person into the book because they were my mentor? I don't want to deny that they were my mentor, but at the same time, how do you deal with the fact that sometimes those that we trust and really respect turn away from the faith? Does that mean that we have to doubt the things that they said? And so I deal with that. And the letter here in chapter 6 is actually I didn't name his name. I just called him Pilgrim. And so instead of a letter written to me, this is me writing a letter to Pilgrim, just sharing my words with him, and words hoping to see him and someday turn back to the faith and recognize, his lostness. And so here we go. Chapter 7 this is where in chapter 7 we get to all the practicalities, and all this is just kind of building up and helping you to see a really good model, a good example of mentorship. And then chapter 7 and beyond is like, now this is how you do it. This is how you develop a culture of mentorship in your team, at your church, within your small group. This is how you basically change the culture from something that's very individualistic to something that is a shared growth experience. And so I'll go through some really practical things there, and I use a lot of word pictures and stories to kind of help you to understand and see it in ways that are simple to understand. And then chapter 8, the focus it's called Dear Paul, Invest in the Future. Chapter 8 is specifically directed at mentors, helping them to make adjustments in the way that they live and the way that they interact with their apprentices, so that they can be the absolute best that they can be. Let's see, I'll give you, it says like 11 things to cultivate in your life if you want to be a good mentor. That's within that chapter. And then sometimes mentors are looking for apprentices. They're looking for someone to pour into. So I have things to look for in an apprentice. And so that's in that chapter. The next chapter is specifically directed towards apprentices. I'm hoping that both mentors and apprentices read this book. But this one's called Dear Timothy, Choose Wisely. Oftentimes, whenever we're looking for a mentor, we may choose someone that looks cool or that we think is a really nice guy or whatever, but this gives it a lot more insight into these are specific things that you need to be looking for in a person. These are specific things, the questions that you need to ask before you begin to take on a mentor. Like, figure out who it is that you're actually going to be learning from. So it says things to cultivate in yourself as an apprentice if you want to be an apprentice, and then things to look for in a mentor, specific things. And then at the end, there's questions apprentices should ask. So this gives you, just instead of just going in blind, it gives you a list of questions that you should ask your mentor on a regular basis to help you just kind of get things moving quickly. This chapter 10, is a starting point and a path forward. So this is where we get into like, let's actually do something. And now that we've talked about it, we've talked about what to do, we've given models, we've given examples, and now let's go ahead and write down a plan. What am I going to do from here? And so that's what we have here is like we're figuring out where you are now, and just sitting down, thinking through it, writing it down, and making sure that there's some accountability. And it's also, we deal with kind of how to move forward, like how to find an apprentice in your life, how to find a mentor. And so that's the end of the majority of the book. And in the end, I have an epilogue, which some of you will love, others may not be as interested, but of all the people that I wrote letters from, I go back and I just kind of give a where are they now, so that you can kind of see how their ministry has continued, who they're pouring into these days, and all that. So this is the book. It's currently on pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'd love it if you guys were to order one and to give me a review after you've read it. I think it will really be a practical help for a lot of folks who are trying to really be good mentors or find a good mentor. And I think for those who are apprentices, I feel like that it will really open up the doors and help them to make the most of the mentors that they have in their life. Oftentimes we have mentors in our lives and we don't even notice it, and we don't even recognize them as mentors until years down the road we realize this person really impacted me by doing this, this, and this, or these things that were said. But if we are able to recognize it, this book will help with that. If we're able to recognize it early, then we can go ahead and dive in fully and see if you can get more out of that relationship. There are several mentors that I've had in my life that I didn't realize the impact of a sentence or a paragraph that they spoke into my life until a decade later. And if I would have asked questions, I would have followed through, I would have tried to see if I can draw more from that well, rather than just the short bit that I got. So go out and buy the book. Thanks for listening. I hope this is a good insight, and good luck.